Once upon a time, there was a girl who thought in pictures. Her name was Temple. It was 1947. Temple lived in a large white house in Massachusetts. She loved spinning in the swing that hung from the maple tree in her backyard. She loved spinning lots of things, actually, from coins to jar lids. Spinning helped her block out the noisy, scary world. For Temple, a whirring fan sounded like a jet engine. Bright lights hurt her head, and the white petticoat she wore to church on Sundays felt like needles poking at her skin. Temple struggled to speak, and people around her often sounded like they were talking gibberish. It made her so frustrated, she'd wail, break things, flap her arms, and cry. Some people thought Temple was stupid because she had tantrums and spoke so rarely. Temple was smart, though. She just didn't think like everyone else did. Instead of words, her head was full of pictures of everything she'd ever experienced. And one day, Temple would use that brain full of images to prove how smart she really was. I'm Kat Taylor, and this is Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, a fairy tale podcast about the rebel women who inspire us. This week, Temple Grandin. When Temple was a baby, she pushed away her mom's hugs. At age 2, when most toddlers start talking, Temple said nothing. Her parents took her to many doctors and finally to a child psychiatrist. It's autism, the doctor said, eyeing Temple's file. Temple's mom, Eustacia, raised her eyebrows. "What does that mean?" she asked. Some people with autism are never able to speak or understand words. Others go to school and get jobs and might just seem a little quirky. Temple's doctors said she would never speak. Some implied that she should be put in a mental institution. Her parents often argued about it. "She's insane," her father said. "You won't admit it. That's why you won't put her in an institution." But Eustacia refused to send her away. Instead, Eustacia hired a speech therapist who taught Temple how to speak in full sentences and to listen closely to others' words. When Temple was 5, Eustacia enrolled her in elementary school. Before Temple knew it, the Grandin house had become a playground. She and her friends played table hockey in Temple's room. They also made up plays, designed costumes, and went on spy missions. More than anything, though, Temple loved to create things. She drew horses running through the fields. She made kites shaped like birds and jellyfish. She built forts in the woods with her friends. In 4th grade, her history teacher asked each student to make a Stone Age tool without any modern-day materials. Temple hunted for the perfect stone and attempted to tie it to a stick using a blade of grass. The stone fell off the stick, but Temple wasn't upset. Trying to figure out again and again how a tool like that worked filled her with joy. One day in 6th grade, her classmates were talking about what they wanted to be when they grew up. Temple thought for a moment. She saw all the inventors she'd read about in books. Elias Howe, the inventor of the sewing machine, and Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamship. She saw their faces and their inventions, and then she saw herself. "I think it would be fun to be an inventor," Temple said. Temple's classmates in elementary school were like family. All that changed when she went to junior high. There were a lot more students at her new school. The bell was loud, and each time it rang, kids poured into the hallways. Lockers slammed, and students bumped into each other. When Temple walked down the hallway, hurtful words came out of nowhere. Weirdo. Dummy. Once a girl called her a very bad name, and Temple threw a history book at her. It hit the girl in the eye. A few days later, her family got a call. Temple had been expelled. Temple's mom and dad started fighting again. Temple's been failing almost every subject, and now she gets kicked out of school, her father yelled. Now you'll have to agree. She can't make it in normal society. But Temple's mom didn't agree. A few weeks later, Temple and her mom packed up Temple's belongings in a few suitcases and headed north. After driving a couple hours along the winding New England roads, they came upon a big sign. Hampshire Country School, student population, 32. Temple's mom turned the car onto the school's gravel driveway. Maple tree limbs stretched overhead. Temple saw horses in the snow-covered fields. Do you see the horses? Temple said excitedly. Yes, honey, Eustacia said. Hampshire Country School was a boarding school made for children like Temple. It was a place where different ways of thinking were valued. The school was surrounded by 1,700 acres of woods, and there was a stable full of horses like the one Temple had seen. Her science teacher, Mr. Carlock, used to work for NASA. He asked them to solve problems and create all kinds of things, from rockets to an optical illusion room. Most importantly, no one made fun of Temple, even though she talked loudly and had short hair. Now a teenager, though, Temple's body was changing and she didn't like it. Her brain was in overdrive. Working with the horses seemed to help Temple, so in Temple's junior year, Eustacia came up with an idea. I've talked with your aunt in Arizona, she said, and she wants you to spend the summer with her on their cattle ranch. Pictures flashed through Temple's mind. Heat rising in waves, a bright orange sun, the desert. She grimaced, no. But with her mom's encouragement, Temple went anyway. The plane ride was noisy. When Temple arrived in Tucson, it felt as hot as an oven. But up in the mountains, where the ranch was, it was a lot cooler. Temple started working right away, building and repairing things. She loved spending time with the cattle. Sometimes she'd go lie down in the pasture, and they'd come up to sniff and nuzzle her. She realized they were curious, but also sometimes fearful, just like her. Sudden changes surprised them, a glint of light or a loud noise they weren't expecting. But when she was lying quietly on the soft grass, they were peaceful and gentle. She was also drawn to the cattle chute, a big contraption that held calves still while they were vaccinated. Temple saw that the calves were nervous when going into the chute, but when the sides of the machine pressed against them, they calmed down. This is like magic, Temple thought. She asked her Aunt Anne if she could try the chute herself. Temple climbed in on her hands and knees, and when Aunt Anne pulled the rope, the gate closed gently around Temple's neck, and the wooden sides of the chute pressed against Temple's body. At first, Temple felt a little panicky, but then she felt peace. Temple had often wanted to be held, but when she was, she felt an overwhelming tidal wave of sensation that made hugs unbearable. Is this what hugs feel like to most people? Temple wondered. When Temple went back to school that fall, she missed the cows and the comfort of the cattle chute. But she had an idea. She gathered a bunch of scrap wood and went about designing a squeeze chute made especially for her. After she built it, the school psychologist called Temple into his office. "We don't have an identity problem, do we?" he asked. "We don't think we're a cow, do we?" "Of course I don't think I'm a cow," Temple answered. "Do you think you're a cow?" The school tried to take the squeeze machine away, but Mr. Carlock, her science teacher, stood up for her. "Let's build a better squeeze machine," he told her. "Then you can do some scientific experiments. Try it out on other people. Find out if it can relax them too." She convinced her classmates to try her newly redesigned squeeze machine and asked them how it made them feel. The majority said they found the machine relaxing. Temple documented the results and showed them to the school's administrators. The school let her keep the machine. That scientific experiment opened the door for Temple's future. She decided to go to college and become a scientist. She studied psychology at Franklin Pierce College and graduated second in her class. Then, Temple decided she wanted to use her visual mind to improve the way animals were treated. So she went back to school for a master's degree. The first day Temple went to the Scottsdale feed yard, where she was conducting her research for her master's degree, a man blocked her way at the gate. "No girls allowed," he said, crossing his arms. "My name is Temple Grandin. I am a graduate student at Arizona State University, and the manager said I could come here." "No girls allowed," he said again, louder this time. She walked back to her car and slammed her door. In the driver's seat, she glared at the man and then stared at the gate. In high school, doors had become an important symbol for her, and in her brain, they marked passages through difficulties and to future possibilities. A blocked door is an opportunity, she told herself. Temple drove away. When she came back the next day, she walked right up to the gate. The man tried to stop her again. She held up a rectangular badge. "What's that?" he asked. Temple wrote for the Arizona Farmer Ranchman sometimes. "This is a press pass," she said. Temple knew that a press pass could get her onto any feedlot, no matter whether girls were allowed. The man scowled at her, but he stepped back. She opened the gate and walked right through. But just because she got through the gate didn't mean she was welcome. At that time, most women in the meat industry worked as secretaries, if there were any women at all. "I won't have any woman teach me how to do cattle facilities," one man said. Still, she kept going back. She gathered data, observing the way cattle were treated and how all the systems worked. Because of her autism, Temple could see many details that others missed. Sometimes she watched the cattle being handled. At other times, she crawled through the chutes and machinery to understand the cow's point of view. And when she put herself in the cow's position, she realized that there were so many things that could frighten or injure them. For instance, they didn't like dangling chains. A dark shadow on the ground might look like a hole and scare them, or hissing equipment could sound like a dangerous snake. When cattle got afraid, they'd often freeze. And because the ranchers didn't realize the cattle were scared, they would jab them with electric prods to move them, which just made them more panicky. One day, though, another door opened for Temple, one that helped her change how people treated cattle around the world. At a livestock show, a man approached her. Temple had written many articles for the Arizona Farmer Ranchman about how to design better cattle facilities, and this man was impressed. "I want you to design a new dip vat," he told her. There was a scabies outbreak among cattle in Arizona. To treat the cattle, most ranches and feedlots used dip vats, 7-foot deep pools filled with pesticides. The only problem was that cattle didn't want to go into the dip vats. They often got frightened, and sometimes they even drowned. "I need it in 2 weeks," the man said. "Can you do that?" Temple had never worked with dip vats, but when she looked at the man, she saw a door opening. "Yes, I can," she said. When she looked at an existing dip vat, she saw the problem immediately. The entrance was a metal ramp. Since cows have hooves, the ramp would be very slippery, which in turn would scare the cows. So Temple sat down at her drawing board, closed her eyes, and then imagined every step of the way from the cow's point of view. And then she started drawing. She drew an entrance ramp with a gentle slope. She made the ramp from concrete, and it was bumpy so the cows wouldn't slip. At the bottom, there was a drop-off where the cows would go under the pool's surface. But since cows swim well, they'd just bob up and swim to the other side, where they could climb up another ramp to get out. Temple knew, because she saw it in her mind, that the cows would walk calmly in and calmly out, safe and cleared of the mites that cause scabies. But to Temple's horror, the first day they used her new dip vat, 2 cows died. Temple didn't understand. She'd seen it in her head perfectly. But then she realized the problem. Some of the cattlemen didn't believe the cows would go down the ramp willingly, so they put a slick metal sheet on top of the grooved cement. "Remove that metal sheet," Temple told the cowboys, anger bubbling up within her. They did as she asked, and to their amazement, her new dip vat system worked perfectly, just as she'd imagined it would. Temple's dip vat design was such a breakthrough, people from around the world started contacting her to design other livestock facilities. These days, when Temple's not designing new facilities or speaking about autism at conferences, you can still sometimes find her out in a grassy meadow, walking among the cattle she's come to love. And if you were with her, she might invite you to come closer, to watch the cattle as they move together in slow, gentle circles. And if you're lucky, she might suggest that you stand out there beside her. And once there, maybe you'd be brave enough to lie down on the ground, feeling the grass beneath your fingertips, listening to the soft shuffle of hooves. "Just be still," she might say. "They're curious. Let them come to you."
Hello, I'm Sadie from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Maisie from New York City. Today's episode was hosted by Kat Taylor. Kat started TomKat Ranch Educational Foundation, TKREF, dedicated to inspiring a green food system through ranching, training, tours, research, and school food and garden programs. If you enjoyed this episode, learn about more Rebel Girls by going to our website. Visit www.rebelgirls.com and use the promo code REBELPODCAST to get 15% off any order. And make sure you stay connected by following us on Instagram and Facebook. The podcast is a production of Rebel Girls and Boom Integrated, a division of John Marshall Media. It's based on the book series Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls. Our executive producers are Alana Favili and Joy Folks. This season was produced by John Marshall Cherry, Sarah Storm, and Robin Locke. This episode was written by Rebecca Behrens and edited by Joy Folks. Original theme music was composed and performed by Electra Barjaki, who has also sound designed this episode. Mattia Marcelli is the sound mixer. Until next time, stay tuned and stay rebel.